4 teams facing elimination this week. Bengals, Colts, Dolphins, Cardinals, all of these teams still alive. All of them must win out and get help, but they're not eliminated yet. $13 million a win. That's what it is.
Wow.
7 wins, $90 million. It's technically $12.8 million a win. We rounded up for old Kirk Cousins. And talked to Kevin Clark this morning.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He said he wonders if this offseason the person calling Kirk Cousins isn't one Kyle Shanahan. Not my take, just Kevin Clark's. Take it up with the Omaha.
Horrible take.
Force multiplier, question mark. All right, listen. Will the true franchise quarterbacks please stand up? Now, CJ is very early, but it has been a sophomore slump, I think, is fair. Now, I still believe in him and believe in his talent, but he hasn't had the year any of us expected, particularly folks that might have picked him to go to the Super Bowl or win league MVP, if you could imagine that. And then there's Justin Herbert, who, again, I believe in Herbert in 7-on-7. I believe in the arm test. I believe in a lot of the eye test stuff. But you got to play well in some big spots and beat some good teams in order to be the definitive force multiplier that I think all of us thought both of these quarterbacks were heading into this year. Media blind spots. So here's what I mean by this. I hear Colin Cowherd wax poetic about Bo Nix all year. And I'm like, man, is he watching the same games as me? And then I had a moment of clarity, Brew. I'm like, I think this is what Brew feels when he hears me talk about Geno Smith. So this is like, you know what? We all have our guys that we're just going to always see glass half full. Seahawks and Broncos, both 8-9 win teams. Broncos should be in the playoffs. Seahawks got some work to do. Rivalry week, or as Brew calls it, no different than the Bengals game. Can we get it up there? I think so. It'll let you guys know who it is. Oh, no, I skipped that one. My apologies. That's next. Come for the quarterback. Thanks, guys. That's my fault. Come for the quarterback. Meaning, I don't really love right now these two teams as full teams. I don't think either defense is super reliable. They both have one great receiver now. The Bucks, Godwin's hurt. Good running games with it. But the reason that these teams are interesting is both of their quarterbacks at various points this year have just been utterly dynamic. Yep. Baker's top 6 in basically every category. Jaden, after the rib-induced slump, I felt like bounced back nicely. And so if they're going to do anything, either one of these teams in the playoffs, it's going to have to be because of the quarterback play. Now, I skipped the come for the quarterback. My apologies. Rivalry week, Steelers-Ravens. Now, I know a lot of people find it outrageous to have the Steelers and Ravens on the same tier. But oddly, it's because the Ravens are so clearly, obviously, a better team than Pittsburgh. Even though they played, the Steelers won, and the Steelers have a better record. Steelers have a better defense and a better coach. But set that aside. This is the game of the week this week, in my opinion. I believe it's on Fox, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And if the Steelers win, very weird spot for our friends at Netflix, because then they lock up the division. The Chiefs maybe lock up the 1 seed this week if the Bills stub their toe. If the Ravens win, of course, then that division is going to come down to the wire. Long season. Here's what I mean. It was all good just a few weeks ago for Detroit. They were the point differential champs. They were the Super Bowl favorites. They have now since then, unfortunately, the defense has been devastated by injury, and you can see it on the field. The Rams, on the other hand, went to the bye at 1-4, seemingly left for dead. Since then, since week 5, they have been 1 game in the standings worse than Detroit. They are getting better at the right time while Detroit's going backwards, unfortunately, at this moment. And right here today, if they were to play, I think that's a coin flip game. This moment, given how both teams, what their current health statuses are. So it felt like the Rams were done 2 months ago. It felt like the Lions were rolling 1 month ago. That can change. Top to bottom teams. Brew, shout out to your Packers. Finally getting some respect on the tiers, some real respect. Hard to find a real weakness with either of these teams. It's hard to find a A+ with either of these teams as far as just the player. Some players can be, but as far as unit. But it's very well coached, really good teams. All right. Funk averted. My Eagles. I mean, they were border. If last week had gone poorly, Brew, they were on funk watch going into it. Absolutely. Instead, they roll Pittsburgh. Same story, different ending question mark. My Bills. Listen, we've seen this. They're the hottest team in December. Josh Allen's an MVP candidate, if not front runner. We've seen that story literally each of the last 4 years. The question is it going to have a different ending? And then championship mentality atop the tiers. Of course, my Chiefs. It's amazing. My 3 teams top.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. Oh, I'm like, we'll jump right into it. First off, this whole idea that he wants to keep kind of ripping on C.J. Stroud and Justin Herbert it's just absurd at this point. First off, how he tried to like throw shade at Greg for saying about, it was ridiculous that they picked the Texans and C.J. Stroud to go to the Super Bowl and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you picked the Chicago Bears and a rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, to do that. You said Caleb Williams was going to be a top 5 quarterback and that the Bears were going to go to the Super Bowl. They're not even in the playoffs. The Texans are at least in the playoffs, okay? And again, the shade of first of all, their roster has been a mess, and the Chargers roster has been a mess. I don't know what you keep expecting Justin Herbert or CJ Stroud for that matter to be able to just like do magic, to pull rabbits out of hats, and it's just not the way it goes. It's just not. I mean, the reality is like, because again, we know that Mahomes hasn't been playing great football, but they won, and it's because their defense has been able to hold teams to less points in situational moments, whereas the opposite has been the case for the Chargers. You know, the perfect example is giving up 40 points against the Bucs. And so again, then not to mention the Chargers are also just dealing with more injuries. They have no run game. Their wide receiver is in and out of the lineup. They didn't make a trade for someone like a Hopkins. So I just this constant kind of like hate on Herbert or being like, oh, we're the real franchise quarterback, please stand up, claiming that either of those quarterbacks, that their level of franchise, their title of being a franchise quarterback is somehow hanging in balance. I mean, that's pretty absurd. That's pretty insulting. Media blind spot. Talking about Bo Nix. I mean, dude, I don't. Does Dan Orlovsky have a blind spot? Does Troy Aikman have a blind spot? Kurt Warner. I mean, like, do all these guys who have been praising Bo Nix, all these ex-quarterbacks, ex-athletes, like, do they all have blind spots as well? Because I don't understand. I mean, you know, it's kind of absurd at this point. Does Matt Hasselbeck have a blind spot? Mark Sanchez have a blind spot? Greg Cosell have a blind spot? I mean, I can go on and on and on. All the people. Hawk have a blind spot. Like, Bo Nix has been really, really awesome as a rookie quarterback. He's been a great rookie quarterback. He's been better than Caleb Williams with less talent around him. So, you know, let's pump the brakes there, okay? The Washington Commanders and the Buccaneers. These are the two. At this point, I have a handful of these teams that I think are probably the most interesting teams. The Commanders, the Bucs, the Steelers, the Rams, and the Ravens. It's a basket, and I'm not saying that all those teams are equal or that they all deserve to be on the same tier, but all those teams I can see just really just shocking people how well they play come time playoffs and how they win games. Like, I genuinely can see the Steelers beating the Chiefs in the playoffs. I genuinely can see the Ravens beating the Bills in the playoffs. I can see the Rams or the Commanders beating, whether it's the Eagles, the Lions are tough, obviously, because of injuries. Like, whoever ends up being the top teams in the NFC. Like, I could see that happening. I could see, like, an awesome first playoff game from Jaden Daniels. I can see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers continuing the momentum that they have. So it's just like it's just kind of like I don't know how to make sense of those teams because they've shown signs of such high level play, but either because of injuries or just whatever, they've also shown some levels where you're like, ugh, not so good. And so that's why it's kind of like, where's the ball going to land come time playoffs? The Lions, I'm actually just like, and I said this actually for the herd hierarchy, I'm actually just taking them out because I'm most definitely not dropping them. I'm not elevating them. I got them in like purgatory here. I'm like, I do not think that they need to be dropped or now doubted because, you know, they've obviously really fallen from grace at this point. And I'm like, let me just see what they look like with all of these injuries. Let me see what this offense, if this offense now has to overcompensate for a lack of defense, for a defense that's going to just give up more points. Let's see what they can do. They've earned that right. They've absolutely earned that right. And it's kind of a similar mentality that Nick has with the Kansas City Chiefs, where even though they haven't been playing great ball, he's like, well, you know, Patrick Mahomes, this, that. I understand the Lions haven't won a million Super Bowls, but considering how dominant and how great they've played throughout the season and how resilient they've shown to be, they've earned that right. And so that's why I'm kind of like, I'm not going to put them under a team or above any other team. I'm like, you earned the right actually to be put in isolation, and let's just see what happens first, and then we'll put you back in. So it's actually a compliment. And yeah, the Packers and the Vikings I think are playing great. I really, really do. I think the Packers and the Vikings are top teams. Like it's kind of crazy that I still think that the Vikings, I just made a whole video about that. The Vikings are still being so undervalued to the point where it's kind of comically hilarious, honestly. And I think the Packers, I think people still doubt who they are because of their start. And I understand it because, again, when you look at the last 2 years, last 2 seasons for the Packers, they got off to a slower start. Then they got real hot. And then they rolled the Packers, obviously. And they had the 49ers. They had the 49ers right there, but they ended up losing. Fine. Then the start of this season, it was a close game with the Packers, but Jordan Love, you know, like it wasn't great. It was a slippery field. Both teams kind of played a little weird. It was in Brazil. Just a bizarre, you know, just like a weird game in general. And then obviously Jordan Love gets injured. Now the Packers are still able to win some games. They bring Jordan Love back. It takes him a second to kind of shake off some rust, get healthy. He has a couple bad games, throws some turnovers. And yet the Packers are still winning some games, but not in ways that you would like. And now there's the feeling of like, the Packers are really not that good. When in reality, there's a great chance that they actually are. That they were essentially a play away from going to the NFC Championship game last year. And there's all the reason to believe that they are legitimately a better team this year, not only from a roster construction, but also just the existing players that were on the team last year should all be better this year. Not to mention just even Matt LaFleur's and Jordan Love's relationship now is more developed. So they should also be better, which I'll talk about in a different video in more detail. So I think there's a lot of doubt around who the Packers are and what they can accomplish. And then, of course, you got the Eagles, the Bills, and the Chiefs. I in no way believe that it should be the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens the Chiefs, Bills, and the Eagles. At the minimum, they should just all be in that pot together, quite frankly. At this point, I would really put a handful of teams in there where it would really just be like, again, the definition, I've said this now for weeks now, the definition of any given Sunday, the Chiefs, who do not deserve to be at the top, the Bills don't deserve to be below the Chiefs or even above the Eagles, and the Eagles don't deserve to be below the Chiefs or below the Bills. Like, that's why at the minimum, they should all be in the same tier, and if anything, you could probably put the Eagles and the Bills above if you want, and then put a handful of other teams in the same category. But I do think that the Chiefs are also probably one of the most interesting teams this season because of the injuries that they've had, and obviously because they've still been able to win. And what will it be? What will it look like when they do get Brown? Will that kind of help their offense more? Will that kind of help protect Patrick Mahomes in a more indirect way? I'm really curious to see kind of what they look like as the weeks go on as well. But honestly, at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of these teams can legitimately win the Super Bowl. I see the Chiefs being able to win the Super Bowl. I see the Bills being able to see the Super Bowl. The Eagles, the Vikings, the Packers. You know, I'm not going to name every single team because I'm going to, but if I do it right now, I'm going to leave out some teams and people are going to be like, what about this team? And I'm going to, I didn't mean to leave that team out. And so I don't want to do this in real time. I think it'll be tough for the Rams. The Lions, like I said, they're in purgatory right now. Like I've already forgot which teams now I've already said. The Ravens, definitely. I think it'll be tough for the Steelers. I think the Steelers out of those other Super Bowl teams are probably the most fragile out of the other ones because of having a little bit older of a quarterback, having Pickens. We saw how reliant they're on, and again, I defended them being reliant on a number one wide receiver, but they don't have like a more dominant run game or a 2-3 wide receiver tight end to really fall back on, like say the Eagles have, or they don't have a prime quarterback like Josh Allen, you know, etc., or all the endless weapons that say the Lions or the Vikings have. So that's why I think like they're more than they're capable of doing it, but I think that they have like an extra layer of fragility. And I think the Bucks would have to. I think the only way the Bucks have a chance to win the Super Bowl is if Baker Mayfield actually proves to legitimately, undeniably, not even actual top 5 quarterback. I know there's mega Baker Mayfield fans and all of that, and they believe it and all of that, but it's not the consensus. When we say who are the best quarterbacks, everyone always says Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, right? Those are the 4 that anyone who's sane will automatically just say that it's those 4 quarterbacks. Everyone else starts to kind of get this debate. What about Hurts? What about Love? What about Goff? Like it's still that debate, but everyone always just rips off those 4 quarterbacks in no order. I just said it random. I don't even remember what order I said. The only way that I see the Bucks actually even getting to the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl is if Baker Mayfield proves to be in that category where you have to say Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Like that's the only way that I see it. And I don't think the Washington Commanders have what it takes right now. They just don't have the team unless Jaden Daniels completely flips the switch and proves to be the greatest quarterback that we've ever seen in the history of the NFL, which again, I just think that that's going to be pretty unlikely to happen anytime soon. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Knicks tiers heading into week 16? Honestly, on one side, the more you do this, the more it's like, the more repetitive it gets a little bit, and also like it gets easier and harder, honestly. And that's why I was like, as I was going through this, I'm like, well, what else is there to say about, are the Packers better than the Vikings? Or how about the Rams over the Ravens? It's like, what more can be said at this point? We've seen all these teams beat each other at this point, or just barely eke out a win against one team. Like, so it's just, you know, at this point, we really are, I'm realizing this with this channel, week 16 onward, it is just kind of like we're just in a holding period waiting for the playoffs to start, honestly. And it's just I don't know, it feels like a tough place to be in from doing these breakdowns perspective. But let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.